My husband's jealous sister tried to steal our wedding with a surprise pregnancy reveal, but her husband exposed her affair and the baby Bombshell instead. Hi there. I've changed all the names in this story because I really don't want any of my relatives recognizing it. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and I've been with my boyfriend, Jack, for several years now. From the start, I could tell that while most of his family eventually warmed up to me, his sister has always been a thorn in my side. Just to give you some background, Jack is the oldest in his family. His parents are Asian immigrants, and his younger sister, Kylie, came along about 3 years after him. Jack once told me that his parents placed a huge emphasis on academics. They were the kind of parents who expected top grades and didn't settle for anything less. That pressure was put on both him and Kylie growing up. Now, Jack wasn't really wired the same way as his sister when it came to school. He was more into sports, and honestly, he was amazing at it. He also had a serious passion for chess and would stick around after school for chess club. But his parents weren't exactly fans of that. They brushed it off, saying chess was pointless and that it wouldn't take him anywhere in life. To them, it was just a distraction from what really mattered, studying. Even though Jack did fairly well in school, it never felt like enough for his parents. Kylie, on the other hand, was the academic superstar. She always ranked at the top of her class and spent most evenings glued to her homework. As you might guess, she became the favorite child pretty quickly. Jack has opened up to me about how his parents constantly compared their grades and would reward Kylie for being the better one. She got the big birthday parties, got to host sleepovers, and was spoiled with fancy gifts. Jack, though? He got shamed for his grades. When his birthday rolled around, his parents would flat out tell him he didn't deserve anything until he earned it through better results. It's hard to even write this, because I've been there during his lowest moments. He's cried in front of me while recounting how unloved he felt growing up. It was heartbreaking to hear how his own family treated him like an afterthought while Kylie basked in all the praise. And Kylie? She soaked it all in. She never missed a chance to belittle him. She'd make fun of his academic performance and treat him with zero respect, even though he was her older brother. That pattern of disrespect hasn't gone away even now. When it came time for college, things hit a whole new level of unfair. His parents told him they could only afford to pay for one of their kids' tuition, and of course, they picked Kylie. Jack would have to get scholarships or take out loans if he wanted to go. He was stunned and devastated. That led to a massive argument with his parents, where he finally confronted them about the way they'd always treated him. He even asked why they had him at all if they never really cared. Their response? They reminded him of the sacrifices they made over the years and said it was time for him to stop whining and grow up. Kylie backed them up and even went as far as calling him names like loser while telling him he wasn't the smart one, so he should just deal with it. That fight was a turning point for Jack. It made him realize once and for all that his parents would always put Kylie first. When he finally got accepted into a computer science program with scholarships, he moved out and decided to go low contact. His parents didn't even bother showing up to help him move or say goodbye. It's painful to think about, but that's how things were. Over the years, they had some contact, but Jack always kept it minimal. When graduation came around, his parents suddenly wanted to show up and support him. But Jack told them not to come. They cried and said they were proud of him, but he reminded them they hadn't contributed a cent toward his education, unlike what they did for Kylie. He said they didn't have the right to celebrate something they didn't help him achieve. There was a bit of back and forth, but eventually, they agreed to stay away. That's pretty much where things stood with his family for a long time. Now, as for me, I'm an architect. I also did a master's in urban planning from one of the top schools in the country. Unlike Jack's situation, my parents were much more supportive. I'm an only child, so I got a lot of their attention. Both my parents are professors, and they always encouraged me to study what I was passionate about. They were big on learning but also told me it was okay to have hobbies in downtime. I know I've been lucky, there was never any competition, no favoritism, and they've always had my back. Jack and I met at work. We were in the same office building, his company was on the 2nd floor, mine on the 7th. We ran into each other in the elevators a lot, and we shared mutual friends who would sometimes organize group hangouts. That's how we officially met at a party, and we instantly clicked. Jack was sweet, funny, and just a good guy. The kind who brings me flowers every month, shows up with my favorite cheesecake when I have cramps, and never forgets to say I love you. He's the one who cooks dinner when I've had a bad day and isn't embarrassed to show affection. I'm a total sucker for romance, so it didn't take long for us to move in together. We were already spending so much time at each other's places, it just made sense. I've heard so many stories from friends about boyfriends who don't lift a finger around the house. But Jack? He's the opposite. If anything, he's more organized than I am. He deep cleans our place every weekend. We split the chores evenly. If he cooks, I do the dishes. If he washes the laundry, I fold it. That's just how it's always been with us. When it came time to meet each other's families, Jack explained that he hadn't been in regular contact with his parents in years and only spoke to them when necessary. He opened up to me about everything, how rough his childhood was, how the favoritism hurt him. Eventually, he decided to reach out to them about me. To my surprise, they were thrilled to hear from him and quickly invited us to lunch over the weekend. I was a little anxious about meeting them, but I wanted to give it my all. It was a big step. His parents turned out to be surprisingly warm. And once they learned about my academic background, they became even more welcoming. Looking back, yeah, it's obvious they liked me partly because of my academic credentials, but I didn't mind. I wanted to make a good impression anyway. They were actually pretty candid with me. They told me they'd been thinking a lot about the past and realized they hadn't treated Jack fairly. They said they were thankful I was in his life, because otherwise, he might have never reached out again. They even gave Jack a clumsy apology, which genuinely caught him off guard. It finally felt like they were trying to do better. But then Kylie showed up and the mood completely shifted. Jack hadn't been told she'd be there, so he was clearly irritated. His parents tried to justify it, saying they wanted this to be a fresh start, a chance for everyone to let go of the past. His mom claimed Kylie only came because she was happy for him. Kylie gave me a quick, polite hug and came off as quiet and shy at first. But the weirdest part? She completely acted like Jack didn't even exist. She didn't say a single word to Jack. Not even a glance his way. But the moment their parents started bragging to her about my academic background, everything about her changed. Suddenly, she was grilling me about my career, the university I graduated from, and then casually throwing in digs about how urban planners were ruining the environment. At one point, she even asked me how I felt about killing trees, which completely threw me off. It was so out of line, and it felt like she was trying to humiliate me in front of her parents because she couldn't stand that they were impressed by me. Throughout lunch, she kept up this passive-aggressive routine. She disagreed with nearly everything I said, even things that were completely harmless. It was like she was determined to contradict me just for the sake of it. When we finished eating, Jack's dad offered to cover the bill, but Jack insisted on paying himself. Out of nowhere, Kylie jumped in and suggested that I should be the one to pay. After all, everyone was there because of me. She threw in this little jab about how, since I earned so much, I might as well put that money to good use. That comment really got under my skin. I mean, yes, I do make a good living, but it was completely inappropriate for her to bring it up like that. Her parents must have noticed my expression because they immediately scolded her. Jack's dad told her point blank that she was being rude and reminded her that I was a guest. His mom agreed and told her to keep quiet. Kylie clearly didn't like being called out. She stood up, furious, and stormed out of the restaurant. After she left, Jack's parents apologized over and over for how she acted. They explained that Kylie just needs time to warm up to new people. I told myself I'd let it go. For Jack's sake, I figured I could just ignore her, especially if it meant keeping the peace. But in hindsight, that should have been my first clue that she wasn't done causing problems. My own family, on the other hand, absolutely loved Jack. They were thrilled about us living together and checked in on me regularly. But as time went on, I started to notice something odd. Kylie was always the first to watch my Instagram stories. I only have a small public account where I share my design work and career milestones, and with just over 1,000 followers, it's pretty easy to track who views my content. Kylie would watch every single story, but she never interacted with anything. She didn't follow me either. Once Jack and I started spending more time with his parents, Kylie's fixation on me only got worse. We had a group chat with Jack's parents and Kylie, but it was mostly dead unless we met up and shared some photos afterward. Kylie never came to these family meetups anymore, but she was still in the group and could see all the pictures. I think that made her even more bitter. Then one day, out of the blue, she sent a Facebook link to the group chat and asked if it was me. I clicked it and found an old picture from high school, me hugging my ex-boyfriend back when we were dating. I'd completely forgotten it even existed. I had no clue how she'd found it or why she felt the need to share it with everyone, but I didn't want to pretend like it wasn't real. So, I replied honestly, said yes, that was me, and explained that he was just an ex. Kylie immediately responded with a snide remark about how cozy I looked in the photo and suggested I ask my ex to take it down because it wasn't appropriate anymore. I was stunned. Not only had she clearly spent a ridiculous amount of time digging through my social media history, but she then made it my problem. Thankfully, Jack had been reading along quietly and finally jumped in. He said it was a perfectly normal photo from years ago and that he didn't have any issue with it. Kylie shot back with some sarcastic comment about how he should have picked someone with higher standards. I was so angry reading that message I honestly felt like if she had been standing in front of me, I might have gone off on her. But Jack didn't hold back. He clapped back saying that he did pick someone with better standards, someone who happened to earn 4 times more than Kylie did. That one stung, and we knew it. Kylie was a graphic designer, and even her parents had mentioned before that she didn't make enough to live on her own. Right after Jack's reply, she left the group chat in a rage and later called Jack, crying and yelling about how he had no right to embarrass her like that in front of their parents. She said she was done with us. Jack didn't care, which only made her more furious. Later that evening, Jack's parents called me to apologize again. They told me they'd talked to her and promised she would be more respectful moving forward. They also reassured me that they didn't care at all about the photo. It was awkward having to talk to my future in-laws about an old boyfriend, but I was relieved they weren't on her side. After that whole fiasco, Kylie stayed away from us. She didn't say anything, didn't rejoin the group chat, didn't bother me again. Then, out of nowhere, a few months later, we heard she had run off and gotten married in Vegas. Her parents were blindsided. They hadn't even met the guy. Turns out Kylie had been secretly dating an older man named Isaac, 13 years older than her, and had never breathed a word of it to her family. They met at work when Isaac was still married. Their affair led to his divorce, and the moment it was finalized, Kylie eloped with him. She didn't say a thing to her parents because she knew they would never approve of her marrying a much older divorced man or forgive her for having an affair in the first place. Jack and I only found out the full story when Jack did a little online snooping and found Isaac's LinkedIn and Instagram. While the affair part was messy, we hoped maybe marriage would help Kylie grow up a bit. We didn't reach out, but we wished her well from a distance. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from Kylie. She said she knew she hadn't treated me well in the past and wanted to apologize. She admitted that she hadn't accepted me as family before but said she had worked through her prejudice and wanted to get to know me better. She asked if Jack and I would join her and Isaac for dinner that weekend. I showed Jack the message. He was unsure about going, but I figured it might be a chance to finally clear the air. She had reached out first, after all, so I convinced him it was worth a try. I messaged her back saying we'd be there, and she sounded genuinely happy about it. When we arrived, Kylie welcomed us warmly into her new home. It was pretty clear Isaac had money, his place was modern, filled with high-end gadgets, and honestly felt more like a showroom than a home. After introductions, Isaac started giving Jack a full tour of the house, even showing off a shelf he had just for his collectibles. With the guys off wandering through the house, Kylie and I sat down and started chatting. At first, our conversation was surprisingly pleasant. Kylie seemed more relaxed than I'd ever seen her, and I started to think maybe she really had changed. She complimented the dress I was wearing, asked a few polite questions about my work, and even shared a bit about what she'd been up to lately. For a moment, I let myself believe that we were finally turning a corner. But then, little by little, the old Kylie started slipping back in. It began when she offered me a drink. I politely declined since I had to drive later, but she rolled her eyes and said something like, "Oh come on, just one won't hurt. You're not that uptight, are you?" I laughed it off, but it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. She then brought up my job again and asked how long I thought urban planning would stay relevant, given all the AI tools that could probably do it faster now. I gave her a neutral response and said tech was changing every industry, but creativity and human input still mattered. She nodded but had this smirk like she didn't buy it. The real shift happened when we sat down for dinner. Kylie suddenly brought up Jack's old high school girlfriend and made a weird comment about how she used to be way more fun and stylish. Jack didn't even respond. I glanced over at him, and he looked like he was trying not to explode. I stayed calm, but inside I was fuming. It was such a petty, unnecessary jab, and I couldn't understand why she invited us over if she was just going to insult me. Still, I kept my cool and didn't say anything back. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction. Isaac, to his credit, noticed the tension and tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. He asked about our plans for the holidays, and Jack mentioned we were thinking of traveling. Kylie then made another passive-aggressive comment about how some people have all the time and money in the world. At this point, I had to take a deep breath to keep from snapping. It was like she couldn't help herself. After dinner, she gave me a tour of their home. As she showed me around, she casually dropped comments about how expensive everything was or how Isaac had this or that custom-made. It felt like a weird attempt to flex, like she wanted to prove something. When we got to the guest room, she pointed to a spare bed and said, "You know, in case Jack ever needs a place to stay." I looked at her, not sure if she was joking or just trying to stir the pot again. She laughed it off, but the meaning behind her words was clear. By the time we left, I was exhausted. Jack could tell I was bothered, but I told him not to worry. I just needed some time to process everything. We didn't hear from Kylie again for a few weeks. I thought maybe she had gotten whatever was bothering her out of her system and had finally decided to back off. But then came the real blow. I knew her well enough not to leave anything to chance. Before the wedding, I had already warned my bridesmaids and made arrangements with the DJ. If Kylie ever tried to hijack the mic, they were to cut the sound immediately. So when she got up and grabbed the microphone, she quickly realized her voice wasn't going through the speakers. She looked around confused while Jack and I pretended like we didn't know what was going on. Then, just as my maid of honor, Marfa, took the mic and the DJ turned it back on for her speech, Kylie must have pieced it together. She realized we'd deliberately silenced her. That's when she lost it. Right in the middle of Marfa's speech, Kylie started screaming, demanding to know how we could not let her speak, claiming she had something important to say. She tried yanking the mic out of Marfa's hands, but Marfa wasn't having it. What happened next felt like a slow-motion train wreck. Kylie climbed up on a chair and started yelling over the crowd, claiming I had always been jealous of her. She called me a bridezilla for not giving her a chance to speak and said I was trying to keep her from sharing her big news. Then, with a big smile, she proudly announced that she was pregnant and said she wanted to reveal it that day because all our family and friends were gathered. She looked around like she was expecting applause, maybe even tears of joy. But instead? Crickets. People glanced around awkwardly, unsure of how to react. Jack's parents looked absolutely furious. His dad leaned toward her and whispered something, likely telling her to stop embarrassing them. His mom told her to sit down. Kylie turned beet red. Then she turned to me and shouted, accusing me of ruining her big moment and claiming this was exactly why she didn't want her brother marrying a loose woman like me. At that point, Jack, who had been holding it together for my sake, stood up, visibly angry. He looked like he was about to go off on her right then and there. But before he could say anything, Isaac, yes, Kylie's husband, got up, took the mic from Marfa, and apologized to us. He congratulated us on our marriage and then turned to Kylie with a firm look. He said, in front of everyone, that he hadn't wanted to do this in public, but she clearly needed to be taught a lesson. Kylie looked confused, unsure of where this was going. Then Isaac dropped the bombshell. Yes, she was pregnant, but the child wasn't his. The entire room gasped. I felt my stomach twist. I could see where this was heading, and it wasn't going to be pretty. Kylie's face went pale. Isaac turned to her and said, before you start making announcements, maybe figure out who the father is first. Then he smirked and stepped back. Jack's parents, stunned, asked him what he meant. That's when Isaac pulled out his phone and showed them photos, proof that Kylie had been cheating on him for the past couple of months. He didn't mention me or Jack at all, he kept the focus on Kylie. He explained that her behavior had changed, and he'd grown suspicious. So he hired a private investigator who had taken photos of her with another man. Jack's parents looked through the pictures, their faces turning from disbelief to sheer disgust. Guests were whispering and murmuring around us. Kylie just sat there, frozen, unable to say a word. It was like she'd finally realized the truth couldn't be buried anymore. Jack took the chance to speak up. He told Kylie to leave our wedding and said he was ashamed to even be related to her. Kylie broke down in tears, clinging to Isaac, who shook her off and walked away. She had no choice but to leave. After that disaster, we tried our best to salvage what was left of the evening. But the damage was done. People couldn't stop talking about Kylie, her outburst, the affair, the pregnancy. It had completely hijacked our celebration. Since that night, I've been receiving threatening emails from strange addresses that are obviously Kylie using fake accounts. In them, she blames me for everything, says I humiliated her and that I should have just let her make her announcement. According to her, this is all my fault and she wants to finish me. I've shown Jack the emails. He thinks we did nothing wrong, and this was all Kylie digging her own grave. Maybe he's a little biased, but I honestly agree. Still, part of me wonders, was I too harsh not letting her speak? Update 1. When I first posted this, I thought a few people might weigh in and tell me if I'd overreacted. But this thing blew up. Hundreds of comments later, and everyone seems to agree Kylie's behavior was beyond outrageous. To answer a few common questions, yes, Isaac has confirmed he's filing for divorce. Yes, I've saved every one of Kylie's emails and plan to forward them to Isaac, they'll definitely help him in court. No, we haven't spoken with Jack's parents yet. We're still on our honeymoon and didn't want to drag such a heavy topic into our trip. We'll talk with them once we're back. Yes, my own parents were horrified by everything Kylie did. They've been calling me every day to check in. They've also been reminding me that I've spent far too long trying to see the good in her, while ignoring the fact that she's deeply manipulative and toxic. They're right. I see it now. And I'm finally ready to cut her out of our lives completely, no more chances. Even if Jack's parents don't like it, I'm done. Update 2. We're back from our honeymoon and finally had that sit down with Jack's parents. To our surprise, they were incredibly apologetic. They said they were deeply ashamed of Kylie and, most shockingly, told us they'd already cut her off. Apparently, after Isaac threw her out, Kylie tried to move back in with her parents. But they refused. They didn't even let her in the house. She had to crash with a friend instead. Jack told them, flat out, that what Kylie did was unforgivable and that we're going no contact for good. He also made it clear, if they ever try to bring her back into our lives, we'll cut them off too. No negotiations. His mom broke down crying. She said she never imagined Kylie could do something like this. I'm not sure if they'll hold that boundary forever, but thankfully Jack is much more firm about these things than I am. He won't budge. So as of now, Kylie is completely out of our lives. And I'm finally at peace with that. Update 3. It's been about 8 months since all this went down, and here's the latest. Isaac has officially divorced Kylie. He told us that before the paperwork was finalized, she confessed to everything. She admitted the affair and said the guy she was seeing meant nothing, it was purely physical, but she got pregnant. She never planned to stay with him and was hoping no one would find out. Because she was the one who cheated, and because she and Isaac never had kids together, she wasn't entitled to any alimony. She even begged Isaac to let her keep one of his cars as a memory, but he shut that down immediately. She cried and said she had no one to turn to, especially now that the child's actual father had disappeared. But Isaac told her, very clearly, that her situation was no longer his concern. Despite everything, we've stayed in touch with Isaac. In fact, he and Jack have gotten closer. They meet up sometimes on weekends to hang out and play video games. Jack's parents still haven't spoken to Kylie either, so I think she really is on her own now. For her child's sake, I hope she starts making better choices. But as far as Jack and I are concerned, that chapter is closed. Forever.